I know that it's time for camp. It's camp season when the hat makes its debut.
I wear, Keiana, this hat about maybe once a year between training camps. And so I know that whenever training camp is open, it's time to dust it off.
Oh, yeah.
Because in this environment, I'm already sweating. I need the hat. But, for you, and because I don't want to upstage you with this look, otherwise people will just be watching me the entire time.
It's true.
I'm going to take the hat off.
And so long with the hat.
Yes.
That's letting you guys know training camp is officially underway.
It's your responsibility to make sure nobody goes over there and steals the hat.
That's true. I mean, this is like an iconic hat.
That is prized possession there.
Matt, I appreciate you joining us. I mean, we've talked quite a bit over the last few weeks. We talked heading into training camp a little bit about the storylines and things to expect, and now that time is finally here. I mean, there were questions. We didn't even know if training camp was really going to happen, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny how training camp evolves. Like some of the stories that you were following immediately, they kind of take a back seat to some of the stuff that happens during the course of camp. And certainly the big thing that happened so far is that Jalen Hurts, somebody who is going to be a player who's going to be counted on. I don't think he was going to be the leading receiver or even maybe the second or third or fourth leading receiver. But he was a valuable piece for this offense as Kyle Shanahan looked at what he wanted to do because of that versatility and the ability against certain opponents to create mismatches. Well, now Jalen Hurts is out for the season with the ACL injury, and now that opens a spot on this roster for somebody who wouldn't have had a spot on the roster. So, whether it's one of the three guys, the veteran guys that are coming in, two guys who have been signed, one who's going through the testing, Jerron Brown is a bug, or whatever, we in Florida right now?
That's what it feels like, the heat, the bugs.
But if it's going to be one of those guys, or it gives Dante Pettis an opportunity to really kind of get his footing back and show that he's capable of so much more than what he showed last year. Also the rookie, Juwan Jennings. He's a big-bodied guy who's feisty, who's physical, who probably is suffering more than just about any player on this team because of the fact there's no preseason games. Because even if he didn't make this team, he might have had a chance by putting good film up there to make another team. He also could have really put the heat on the decision makers of, hey, if you don't keep me on the 53-man, there might be 31 other teams who are ready to pounce. So that's right now is kind of the storyline of the wide receivers. And I think what we've seen has been pretty encouraging, I think, for the 49ers as far as what we've seen from the wide receiver position out here.
You touched on a few topics that I want to dive a little bit more into in just a bit. But in the meantime, let's take a look at what's going on the field behind us. 49ers taking the field. Just finished up with stretches, so now it looks like we're going through position group drills over here behind us. But, Matt, 26 years, right? 26 years covering the 49ers. This is a completely different camp than I think anyone has ever experienced. But from a coverage standpoint, how has this camp been different for you?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is just how interviews are conducted. You don't have an opportunity to really create that one-on-one interaction. As far as watching the practices, it's a little bit different than what it's been in the past because we're kind of locked in over on this side of the field, and on this side of the field, you have the DBs, like basically right behind where you are. You have the linebackers in the middle of the field, and you have the defensive backs at the far, or the defensive linemen at the far end. And so we're so far removed from where the quarterbacks, the running backs, the offensive players are on that side. Also, like yesterday, practice might as well. Yeah, I mean, might as well have had practice at Candlestick Park because I couldn't see really much of anything that's going on. So practice today will be good because it's on the field closest to us, and obviously they rotate the fields to keep them in good shape. But to me, like the biggest difference is just the interaction with Kyle Shanahan, with the coaching staff, with the players. You can't just have those casual conversations walking off the field or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of casual conversations, I feel like when all of the beat writers and the reporters, we all see each other. We get excited. It's like we've been talking on Zoom calls for who knows how long.
You don't get excited to
oh,
see
we
the
get
beat
excited
reporter.
to see you, Matt Maiocco. But, I mean, the same thing goes,
Yeah.
I think, for the players on the field. They got pretty excited to see each other. And I have a story that I'll follow up with, but what have you picked up from listening to some of these press conferences, hearing the guys, hearing the vibe, hearing the energy of them being back on the field? What have you picked up so far from these guys?
Well, I think that I don't hear anybody complaining. You know, that's
Yeah.
a good thing,
Yeah.
is that it's kind of like here are the protocols, here are the challenges that we face, and everybody is expected to kind of keep their head down, grind, and basically not make any excuses. You know, so there's no I mean, everybody's playing by the same rules around the league. And I've heard several different people, and I think Richard Sherman was the first, who said the team that adapts, you know, the fastest, the best, will be the team that's left standing at the end of the season. I think there's a lot of truth to that. You know, you look around the league, and I believe there are now 11 players on the reserve COVID-19 list from 9 different teams. The 49ers had a couple cases early, or a couple players go on that list early. But since then, you know, for the past 2 weeks, there's been nothing. And so it's basically what they've been doing, they have to keep doing, and you got to do it all the way through and never let your guard down, because one person lets their guard down at any point in the season, and that can derail an entire team. You know, if it's an important player, a key player, or that player coming in contact with a key player, if that happens during the week of a big game, you've just, by one person not doing what he's supposed to do, or, you know, if you look, coaching staffs too, one person not doing what he or she is supposed to do, that could sabotage an entire organization. And as Mike McGlinchey said, it's not just the team, it's also the teams you're playing. You know, there's this kind of mutual respect, this mutual, you know, there has to be a level of taking care of everybody else.
Right.
You know, this accountability of take care of yourself, because your actions affect everybody around you here, but also it affects everybody around the league too.
Right. I feel like the guys, just coming off of that season last year, I feel like it's a renewed mindset. Like, the guys are taking this very serious. Richard Sherman said he doesn't have to babysit any of these guys. He feels like these guys will be responsible, and they know what's at stake here. And just going back to these guys getting on the field, getting back in this building, you got to remember, no off season. I mean, everything was done virtually, but the guys aren't physically here at the facility. I remember I talked to DJ Jones. It was right when the guys got back, and he said, you know, if he did like one of those like slow, like everything was in slow motion, like those slow motion hugs when he saw his teammates, because he was so excited to be back here with the guys, be back in the building, to get back to the field. And I think that's a lot of the guys on the field. They're all anxious to get back on the field, get back together, because that's a long time to be without your team. Typically they're together, back in April?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this team, what you're touching on here is it's a close-knit team.
Yeah.
And these guys enjoy their the company of others. And from, you know, someone like you, Keiana, who's around the team, you know, for someone like me, you know, who's been around teams for quite some time, I mean, it's a good collection of guys. And, you know, unlike maybe some teams in the past, if I'm walking down the street and I see a player coming to me, I'm not crossing to the other side of the street to avoid them. You know, they're a pretty good group of guys. And, you know, I mean, I know your viewers don't know much about Jerick McKinnon, but he is he's got this vibe to him that is really neat, you know, and he's just a easygoing, likable, personable guy during a time when he's had nothing but bad things happen to him for 2 years. And so if there's a guy who has a reason to be salty, you know, it's him. It's Jimmy Ward, who last year had a good year. But they have these guys who are just consistent, you know, in their personalities. Not everybody. I'm sure there's some guys who wake up on the wrong side of the bed on occasion. But it's a cohesive group. And really, I've never been around a group where it's just really a seamless, you know, not to overuse this word, but family.
Yeah.
And so everybody does get along with each other, and they're playing for each other, and it's a John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and everybody in the personnel department, the coaching staff, they've really done a good job of identifying the kinds of players they want and then getting those kinds of players.
In case you just tuned in, this is the 49ers Live Look-In. Keiana Martin joined by NBC Sports Bay Area's 49er insider, Matt Maiocco. Matt, yesterday, pads came on. So they say, what's the saying, when the pads go on, the intensity goes up. Did
you just make that up? That was good.
Maybe, I don't know.
You should trademark that. I'll buy the T-shirt.
There we go. Oh, maybe we can start our own T-shirt wars. We see what Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle are doing. Even Trent Taylor getting in on the action. Pads go on, intensity goes up. It was kind of, I would say, even though you expect intensity to go up, it was probably a pretty mellow practice yesterday. I think things will continue to go up as the days go on, day 2 with pads here. But is there a position group or a player that you're excited to watch now that the pads are on?
Ooh. Well, I can tell you the thing with the pads on, and I wrote about it today at NBCSportsBayArea.com. Actually, yesterday I wrote about it, but you can still find it. To me, probably the must-watch competition, and it is not a competition for who's starting. It's a competition head-to-head, and it's Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. And yesterday, I mean, I thought Trent Williams looked really good. And we all know, which has got to be encouraging for the 49ers, because we all know what Nick Bosa is capable of doing.
Yeah.
And we know that he's taken his game to another level. But, man, Trent Williams, when you look at that, the size, the strength, the athleticism, I mean, he's gonna make this team better.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely excited to see more of Trent Williams. And I love that you just brought him up, because you talked about it earlier. You talked about this lack of preseason and some of the guys that might be a challenge for them to find a spot on this roster now that 49ers are going straight from training camp into week 1. But when you look at, and I know we can go multiple ways, but I'm going to talk about veterans like Trent Williams. I know they don't typically play an entire, half of a game in the preseason, aside from that dress rehearsal. But what are guys like Trent missing with the preseason? Is he a guy that would benefit from it? Is he okay just jumping right in at week 1? How do you kind of assess how he kind of goes into the fold?
Well, I'm gonna offer an alternative view of this.
Okay.
I actually think it might help him that there are no preseason games. Because, and the reason I say that is I don't think he would have played a whole lot anyway.
Yeah.
And if he had been playing, maybe he's going up against a team that's resting their best defensive end. When you also look at the preseason games, the 49ers don't practice the day before preseason games. They obviously don't practice the day of preseason games, and they don't practice the day after preseason games. So what you're doing is you're taking 3 opportunities away from him to go up against Nick Bosa. So knowing how Nick Bosa approaches his craft and how good he is, and how I don't know that they did this after the practice yesterday, but I'd be surprised if they didn't at some point get together, Nick Bosa and Trent Williams, and even casually just kind of like, hey, what do you see for me? What did I show you on this move, on this play? So from that standpoint, I think it might actually benefit Trent Williams to not have any preseason games, because that allows him the opportunity to get more really game action types of reps by going up against Nick Bosa.
That's a different perspective that I haven't heard, and it makes a lot of sense. Taking those, you don't really think about it. They don't practice that day before the game, the day of the game. So this is giving them more opportunity to go head-to-head against the reigning defensive rookie of the year.
And yesterday I think they went like 18 snaps, one-on-one in 11-on-11 drills. That's good work, and that's just one day. And so if you take that out over 3 days of practice, that's quick math here. That's 54. Is that right? Yeah, let's go with 54. That's 54 snaps. So that's basically playing a full game, Trent Williams against Nick Bosa.
That's right. Make sure if you guys have any questions, use hashtag 49ersCamp on Twitter, and we will try our best to get to those if you have any questions for Mr. Matt Maiocco.
If I have a question for you, do I have to do that Can I tweet it or can I just ask you?
You know what? I can't let people skip ahead of the line. You might have to just use the
man.
It's
But
okay, Matt.
I'm
Go
raising
ahead.
my hand. I have
There
a question for
Let's
you.
go.
So are you able to interact with the players? Are you allowed? I mean, you're an employee, but are you on a certain tier level where you can meet the guys a little bit face to face?
Right. So what the NFL is doing now is that they're putting the teams in different tiers. You have your players and your coaches who are in tier 1, and your second tier, you have some of that equipment staff, you have the trainers. Those are the people that have that direct contact with players, with coaches. And then they have the third tier, and then there might be additional tiers. But your third tier are the people who have access to the team, but not that in-person access.
Okay.
So how you and I can have this conversation, it's not quite like that with the players.
Okay. Do you get tested?
Yes. So just like the players, I'm regularly tested because I will be in the vicinity of them. But we still have those. Everything's done now virtually. So we're doing our virtual interviews. We're not going away from that.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, the beauty of technology. So none of that goes away. It's just you got to be creative and find new ways.
Okay. So that's
your
my
job.
first question. My
Okay.
second question is, just being around them a little bit, are there which newcomer, just one guy,
okay.
and not necessarily not as a player, but what newcomer have you kind of liked, just the way he carries himself, the vibe he gives off?
Oh, I love this question. This is a good one. I had 2 names, but I'm going to give you one.
Okay.
I might give you 2.
Yeah, give me 2.
The first one I'll say is Juwan Jennings. I talked to him immediately after the draft, and we did like a chat, a one-on-one, and it's up on 49ers.com and on YouTube. But just a guy that's just genuinely excited to play football. I love the energy he gave off. I know a lot of Tennessee fans. We have tons of Tennessee fans that are 49ers fans, but a great guy. I thoroughly enjoy getting to know him.
Right, and he's a guy that had some issues in college,
Right.
and maybe was, at times maybe even more fiery than they wanted him to, but that's interesting. That's a good one.
A second person that I'll say is Brandon Aiyuk. Now, here's the reason why. Literally this morning, it dropped on 49ers.com, his rookie blog. So what the rookie blog is we take a rookie and we have him document a time period. So for him, it's from his very first Zoom meeting all the way into his first padded practice. And he talks about, and it's so relatable, Matt, because when you're on a Zoom call and it's like a bunch of people talking and you're trying to find your in, when can you jump in and say, hey guys, I'm Brandon. Yeah. And he was just struggling just to get in and say hello. But it was so relatable and just a great kid.
I got a story about him.
Oh, go ahead.
So when he played at junior college, Sierra College, he had a very good relationship with his head coach, Ben Noonan. And so there was a time, Ben Noonan is from Santa Rosa, and Ben Noonan and his family, very tight. His mother passed away in August of that year. The Sierra College football team was getting ready to play Santa Rosa in Santa Rosa, and Brandon knew it was going to be a big day for his coach. That week, because Brandon was doing everything, the coach took him off of special teams. They'd pass in the hallway, and Brandon wouldn't even look at the coach. And he, ignored him. And, you could tell, the coach knew, why is he upset with me? Finally, they had a good relationship. He said, Brandon, what is going on? Will you just tell me what's going on? You're treating me like you've never treated me before.
Yeah.
And Brandon goes, you took me off special teams. And I can make a play. He goes, I tell you what, if it comes to a point in a game where we can win it, I'll put you on special teams. And he goes, no, I might be able to win the game for you early in the first quarter. So the coach said, I'll put you back on special teams. He had the game of his life, returned a kick for a touchdown, did this and that. And after the game, Brandon Aiyuk grabbed the game ball, and all of the coach's family was there because it was an emotional time because of his mother's passing. And Brandon Aiyuk handed the coach the game ball and said, this is for your mom.
Wow. I mean, and this is just me getting to know him for a brief amount of time. He's only been with the team since April, but just I feel like such a good kid.
Yeah.
A good kid.
And a darn good player.
A darn good player, which is great. A great segue into, our next topic. I want to talk about the 49ers receivers. You talked about the news. Jalen Hurd potentially an ACL out for the season. Tough loss because we know what he went through last season with his back. Didn't get to play in the regular season. But now you look at some of these guys who might have to step up. Yep. Juwan Jennings. 49ers might rely on a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. Kyle said yesterday he hasn't decided what receiver's going to play where, but what's the approach that you think the 49ers will take with Hurd out for this season, potentially? Yeah. Deebo Samuel could miss a couple of games. Yeah. It's not certain yet, but it's a possibility.
Well, yeah, I certainly get the idea that the 49ers are hopeful that Deebo Samuel will be able to play from week 1, but let's just assume he's not. Hey, let's not sleep on Kendrick Bourne.
That's right.
Kendrick Bourne, I think Kendrick Bourne and Brandon Aiyuk, to me, have been the 2 best receivers on this team early in camp here. And then I think another guy who is coming back from an injury, who I think has a chance to have a really good season, that's Trent Taylor out of the slot. So then you're looking at, Dante Pettis. Is he going to regain his mojo? You have the 3 veterans coming in. I'm going to put Jerron Brown in that too, because I think he's kind of working through it and might be out here in the next, maybe on the next practice. But Tavon Austin, J.J. Nelson. There are guys who are capable of playing, but I think Kendrick Bourne, watching him, he looks so much different. He looks stronger.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan always talked about how good his hands were, and he had that game against Seattle where he dropped a few. But Kendrick Bourne had a really good season, and he was like the first down making machine for this team. So I look for him to really be the guy. He and Brandon Aiyuk, who really pick up the slack while Deebo Samuel's out.
All right, as we're wrapping down, I think we have about 30 seconds left of this. Give me a player on offense and defense so far through the first 3 practices who has really impressed you. On
offense, well, it'd be Brandon Aiyuk because, we've already talked about him. Jerick McKinnon, I love his route running out of the backfield. Defense, I'm going to go with, Quan Alexander, just because the energy. It's something that you forget about, but watching him in pads yesterday, every day he gets his teammates fired up. So those are the 2.
I'm going to throw out my name, and I'm going to say Marcel Harris.
Yep.
2 practices with interceptions. Definitely excited to see what he does going forward. But that's going to do it right here for your 49ers Live Look in. Matt Maiocco, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back. What's today? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
So the guys have a day off tomorrow. We will be back on Thursday, 10:20 a.m. for your 49ers Live Look. And stay tuned to 49ers.com for your highlights and all news 49ers camp.